My son tried to stop me from entering the living room at the family barbecue. When I finally walked in, I froze. I saw a young woman hugging my husband tightly, her hand sliding into his pocket. "Oh, come on," he said. "He's been doing this right under your nose for years, Mom." "You didn't even notice," my son added. "Yeah, Mom. Everyone knows. She's like our second mother." I left the room silently to collect myself. When I came back, I unleashed the most brutal vengeance they could ever have imagined. My name is Eleanor, but everyone calls me Ellie. And I want to tell you a story. My story. For the longest time, I couldn't even say these words out loud. But I believe the time has come. It's about a 40-year marriage, a family I built from the ground up, and how it all fell apart in the most unbelievable way. Walter and I had been married for 40 years. 40 years is a lifetime, isn't it? We raised two wonderful children, Tiffany and Marcus, and we're blessed with two granddaughters, Zoe and Kayla. We had the single-family home in the suburbs, the manicured lawn, the whole American dream of a perfect life. Or so I thought. After Walter retired from his director position and I left my part-time job at the public library, our lives were supposed to settle down. We were meant to glide into that comfortable golden rhythm of retirement you see in the magazines. But life isn't a magazine. For the last decade or so, I'd been battling severe rheumatoid arthritis. Some days were better than others. On good days, I could tend to my flower beds, attend my book club, and cook Walt's favorite pot roast. On bad days, simply holding a cup of coffee felt like clutching a handful of broken glass. The pain was a constant, unwelcome guest in our home, and over time, it had changed the landscape of our marriage. The physical intimacy we once shared had become a casualty of the disease. It was a silent sorrow between us, something we acknowledged but rarely spoke of. I thought we had an understanding, a closeness that went beyond that. I thought he, of all people, understood my struggle. Walter was still healthy, thank God. He was a vibrant man, full of energy. He played tennis twice a week, had a regular Friday night poker game with his buddies, and was always busy with some project in the garage. I was happy for him, truly. I never wanted my condition to slow him down. But lately, a new kind of distance had crept in. It wasn't just the separate hobbies. It was something in his gaze. He seemed restless, impatient. The signs were small at first, easy to ignore. He started spending more time on his phone, angling the screen away when I walked into the room. His poker nights began ending later and later. Sometimes he'd come home smelling faintly of a perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked him, he'd just dismiss it with a wave of his hand. "Oh, that's just Sharon. You know how she hugs everyone," and I'd let it go. What else could I do? Questioning it felt like admitting the foundation of our 40-year marriage was cracking. It was easier to pretend I didn't notice. One Tuesday afternoon, I was getting ready for my weekly book club meeting. It was my only real social outlet, a small island of normalcy in my sea of chronic pain. I was looking forward to dissecting the latest novel with my friends. Just as I was grabbing my keys, my cell phone vibrated. It was Margaret, the hostess. "Ellie, I am so sorry," she said, her voice raspy. "My grandson has caught a terrible flu. We're going to have to cancel today." I felt a pang of disappointment. "Oh, of course. Don't worry a bit. I hope he gets better soon." I hung up and stood in the silent entryway, the quiet of the empty house pressing in on me. Walt thought I would be out for at least 3 more hours. A little idea popped into my head, a nice quiet evening. Maybe I could stop by the butcher shop and pick up some prime ribeyes he loved, and we could have a nice dinner, just the two of us. It felt like a good plan, a way to bridge that growing distance. I felt a small spark of hope as I got back into my SUV and headed home, completely unaware that I was driving straight into the wreckage of my life. The drive home was short, just about 10 minutes. I remember the weather was beautiful that day, one of those perfect fall afternoons where the air is crisp and the leaves are brilliant shades of orange and gold. I pulled into our driveway and noticed an unfamiliar car parked farther down the street. It was a small, sporty red convertible, the kind of car a young person would drive. I didn't think much of it. New neighbors had moved in a few houses down. I unlocked the front door, calling out, "Walt, honey, I'm home early." Silence. That was the first thing that struck me as odd. Usually the television would be blaring in the den, tuned to some sports channel. But the house was still. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. "Walt!" I called again, a little louder this time. I walked across the foyer and into the living room, and that's when I saw it. The scene is etched into my memory like a photograph. Walt was standing by the fireplace. He wasn't alone. A young woman was with him. She couldn't have been more than 30 with long blonde hair and a tight dress. Her back was to me, but his face was clearly visible. He had his hands on her waist and was leaning in to kiss her. They froze when they heard me. The woman whirled around, her eyes wide with a flash of panic. Walt just stared at me. There was no surprise on his face, no guilt, only annoyance. Pure, absolute annoyance, as if I was the one who had done something wrong by simply existing in my own home. My purse slid from my fingers and hit the hardwood floor with a dull thud. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. I looked from Walt to this woman, this stranger in my living room, and back to Walt. My mind struggled to make sense of what I was seeing. The woman was the first to find her voice. I should go," she stammered, grabbing a small clutch from the armchair. "Yes," I said, my own voice a husky whisper I didn't recognize. "You should." She scurried past me without making eye contact and fumbled with the front door before rushing out. I heard the engine of that small red convertible roar and then fade away down the street. And then there were just the two of us. I turned to face my husband of 40 years. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break them. "Walt!" I began, my voice trembling. "Who was that?" He sighed, a heavy, annoyed sound, and ran a hand through his hair. He wouldn't even look at me. He walked over to the wet bar and poured himself a glass of scotch. "Her name is Chelsea," he said, still with his back to me. Chelsea, I repeated the name. It felt alien and ugly in my mouth. "And what was Chelsea doing here, Walt?" "In our home." He finally turned around, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. The look on his face was one I had never seen before. It was cold, defiant. "Come on, Ellie, don't play dumb. You know what she was doing here?" The sheer audacity of it stole my breath away. "I don't know," I managed to choke out. "I don't know anything. I come home and find you with another woman and you expect me to what? Understand?" "Maybe you should," he snapped, his voice rising. "Maybe you should try to understand what it's like for me. You think this is easy living like this? We're roommates, Ellie. We haven't been husband and wife in years." Every word was a physical blow. He was using my illness, the pain I endured every single day, as an excuse, as a justification for betraying me, for bringing another woman into the sanctuary of our home, the home I had poured my life into. "So this is the solution," I screamed, tears now streaming down my face. "Instead of talking to me, instead of being my partner, you go out and find her." "She makes me feel alive, Eleanor," he yelled. "She's fun. She's not tired all the time. She doesn't complain about her aches and pains." The cruelty of it was overwhelming. I felt a sudden burst of anger that burned away the tears. "Get out," I whispered. "What?" he said. "Get out," I repeated. My voice was now dangerously quiet. "I don't want you in this house tonight. Go stay with a friend. Go stay with Chelsea. I don't care, but get out of my sight." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched. I think he expected me to crumble, to beg. He didn't expect this. Without another word, he slammed his glass onto the bar, grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door and left, slamming it shut behind him. And I was left alone in the ruins of my 40-year marriage. I sank onto the sofa, the silence of the house screaming in my ears, and finally allowed myself to break. I spent that night in a daze. I didn't sleep. I just wandered from room to room, touching the furniture, the photos on the walls. Memories of a life I suddenly wasn't sure had ever been real. The next morning, Walter returned. He didn't apologize. He acted as if nothing had happened, brewing his morning coffee, reading the newspaper. The silence was a weapon, and he wielded it with expert precision. This continued for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of living with a ghost in my own house, barely speaking. I felt like I was losing my mind. I considered calling the kids Tiffany and Marcus, but what would I say? Your father is cheating on me. The words felt too shameful to utter. I was paralyzed.